Good evening. Hello, everybody. Thank you. On behalf of Macy's, I'd like to welcome you to Victoria Gardens and to our Hispanic Heritage Month event. We're excited to embrace unity through art, music, and fashion of Latinx creators with you, and we're extremely proud that this evening, Cheech Marin, Mexican-American comedian, actor, and one of the world's largest collectors of Chicano art, will be with us shortly on stage. But prior to that, I'd like you to welcome Todd Wingate, Chief Curator of Riverside Art Museum, who will be our host for this evening's event. Please give him a warm round of applause. Todd?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Wow, there's a lot of you. Welcome. So, without further ado, let me introduce Cheech.
Thank you. I got one. I own my own Cheech Marin. How's everybody tonight? Good? I thought that was a dressing room. I was going to try on some pants, but I guess not.
So everybody knows Cheech, right? Do you need the big great introduction? How many of you have seen Boys in East LA? Yes.
How many you've seen Born in East LA more than 100 times?
So in addition to Born in East LA and his touring with Tommy Chong as Cheech and Chong, he's appeared in over 25 films, including Tin Cup. It's going to be a long
It's going to be long.
and in 8 films directed by Robert Rodriguez. On television, he's been a sitcom regular before joining Don Johnson in the highly successful CBS drama Nash Bridges. Yes, Disney, Pixar animation film roles, Oliver and Company, Lion King, and Cars 1, 2, and 3. He's author of children's books, including Cheech the School Bus Driver, and in 2009, everybody's favorite comedic duo reunited after 25 years apart, and Cheech and Chong are touring again.
Yeah. So if any of you are in Canada for the next month, we'll be there, so look for us.
But in addition to all that, Cheech is also recognized today as a preeminent Chicano art activist. Mid-90s, he began developing what is now arguably the finest private collection of Chicano art in the world, following the success of his groundbreaking Chicano Visions exhibition that toured the nation during 2001 to 2007 and broke attendance records in 15 cities. 13 additional exhibitions are drawn from the collection and have since toured more than 50 major art museums across the United States and in Europe. Furthering his goal to introduce Chicano art to a wider audience, last year, Cheech entered into a partnership with the city of Riverside and the Riverside Art Museum to create the National Cheech Marin Center for Chicano Art, Culture, and Industry, also known as the Cheech. Cheech is slated to open in 2021 and will become the permanent home for his collected works of Chicano art, including paintings, sculptures, and photography. So one more time, let's give a round of applause for Cheech.
Thank you. It's been nice being here. You guys have been swell.
So we're here to talk about Chicano art, but I wanted to ask you first. You talk a lot about art in general, and you've got a deep and passionate understanding of art. And so would you talk a little bit about where your love of art came from?
Oh, okay, sure, I'd love to. From an early age, I was raised Catholic, and you would go to mass every Sunday, and when you're a kid, the only thing on your mind is how long is this gonna take? And I would wander around and look up, look at everything that's going on. Look up at the ceiling, and there was all these paintings and guys in sheets walking around in clouds, and a guy over in the corner getting barbecued, So I'm intrigued, So how does this work? So I started getting interested in liturgical painting, and every church I went to, I looked at the art there, and for many we're off. Oh, in many hundreds of years, that art Catholic art or liturgical art was the only art that there was, you know. So I started studying that, and then I was very lucky to be a part of a group of cousins. We grew up in L.A. who were really academics, and we all went to Catholic school, and we wanted to learn about different stuff. And so we had the head cousin Louis, who was extremely brilliant, and he organized us into this little group and assigned us topics to learn all about. You know, Regine, you learn about the Middle Ages. Lolly, you learn about science, and then turn to me, Cheech, you go find out about art, and you bring about all those things that you learned back to the group. And so that's what I did. But how do you do that? How do you learn about art? I did what everybody does. I went to the library, you know, the public library in the town I was living at, and I took out every book that they would let me. And the ones they didn't let me take out, I studied them right there. And I went through, okay, that's Picasso, that's Degas, that's Caravaggio. So I learned about the Western art in that way. You know, I had a really academic appreciation for it. And then I started going to museums. And that's the key. That's the key. In order to appreciate paintings, you have to see them live. Because photographing them, although it's a good representation of them, there's something about the quality of the paint that you can only appreciate live, and you have to get up as close as they'll let you. And because paint is the most wonderful medium. It can be transparent, it can be translucent, it can be thick, and you can't see through it. You can mound it, you can, you know, everything you can do to it. And so it's very different every time you see one, you know. And paintings always amaze you when you go to see them live. I was one of the examples is that, and one of the things I was studying, I studied Dutch art, you know, Rembrandt, Frans Hals, all those guys, and so I knew all Rembrandt paintings, and so I find myself in Amsterdam. One time we were working on a movie, and I said, well, I got to go to the Stedelijk, or no, what was that? The Rijksmuseum. The Rijksmuseum, they have all the Rembrandts there, and so there was this one painting, The Night Watch, is probably his most famous painting. And I went in there, and in books, it's this little, you know, representation. There's a one for it. You go in there and you see it live. It's a mural. It's the biggest thing you've ever seen. Like, wow, and you know, and the figures are life size. And I spent at least an hour just staring at this painting, going along with it, and it really changed the way I viewed art. And so from that day forward, I had to go see paintings in person. At the same day. One of my favorite painters was Johannes Vermeer, and they had all the Vermeers there at the Rijksmuseum. So I said, well, I'll have a glass of wine and go see this. And so I went down to the hall, to the room where they are, and as the Night Watch was this gigantic painting, the Vermeers were little, tiny. They were like that big, you know, but they looked that big in books. And so I came to the realization that it's not the size of the painting, it's what's inside the frame that counts. And they can be little, they can be big, they can be medium size, but they capture something in paint. That artist captured something in time, and you get to study it when they commit it to painting. So that's what I did, and at a certain point, I knew everything about, not everything, because nobody can know everything. I knew a lot about Western art, but I didn't know about contemporary art. And so my wife at the time she was a painter, and so she started taking me around to galleries on the west side of L.A. Because I knew some names of contemporary painters, but I didn't really know who they were and what they did. And that's when I discovered these Chicano painters. And they had already been out, and they'd had a little period of notoriety, some of them, and they started being collected. And I looked at, and I knew what good painting was at this time, and I said, these are great painters. These are really good. It's like hearing a band, you know, hey, these guys can play, you know, this is not, no bullshit about it, you know, well, how come they're not getting any shelf space? How come only one gallery is carrying them, and they're not in museums, and they're getting feedback? And so I started immersing myself in that world, and I was the perfect storm. I had the knowledge of the paintings. I had the desire to collect them, and I also had the money to put together a collection and have notoriety in order to publicize them. So that's what I started doing. I collected for about 10 years before I did anything. And one of my friends in the art world said, "You got to show these paintings, man. They're not going to do you any good in storage or under the bed or wherever you got them. You got to show them to people." Okay, well, how do you do that? So you go around and you ask different museums, and there was a resistance to Chicano art at the time because they didn't want to let you in. They just really didn't want to let you in because they had their categories all set, and we didn't kind of fit into the category. So I kept pushing in different museums, and even big museums. It got to be kind of testy with them because I kept insisting. Well, the reason you don't have Chicano art in your museum, I have this collection because you don't. And there was no answer to that, Well, oh, okay. They said, well, we have this Latin American department. I says, I'm sure you do, and I'm sure it's a very nice Latin American department. But this is art by Americans, about America, made in America by Americans. Is there anything about that you don't understand? And there was just a resistance. And so I started saying, well, this is the point at which we push. Because we're tired of being second-class citizens in this thing. We're tired of being shut out of museums, and it changes now. And so when they realized that there was going to be a kind of an organized pushback, they did it finally, and we had become maybe the most successful tour of American School of Art in the last 50 years. We broke attendance records at every single museum that we went into, starting with the Smithsonian, LACMA, the De Young, the San Diego Museum, 15 major museums across the country. And now everybody was kind of, on a national scale, introduced to Chicano art. And it was funny how that went, is that always the reaction was, well, I didn't know what Chicano was, Chicano paintings were, but I didn't picture it was going to be like this. I like this, but they had some other vision in their mind of what it was going to be, because they always tried to categorize Chicano painting as agitprop folk art. That was it. Agitational, propositional, political art. And if it wasn't a Chicano painting, let's say it had a clenched fist, a barbed wire, a sacred heart, and a crown of thorns. Man, that was it, And that was Chicano painting. And that's what they wanted to push you into this little corner. And I've always resisted being pushed into a little corner, and so I said, "No, we're gonna start doing this." And so, it sounds easy at the beginning. I'm gonna make a stencil. We're gonna do this, and okay, it costs money, a lot of money to put on a tour. And so, from the time I decided actually to do this tour, the time we got LACMA, it was 10 years. 10 years I went around to every single corporation and did my little dog and pony show, and General Motors and General Mills, anything with a general on it sounds like they had money. So, and we almost had the Army sponsor the show. Number one hirer of Chicanos in the world. I just did it almost to piss everybody off, because I was tired at that point. And so we were very lucky that the Target stores and Hewlett-Packard stepped up and sponsored the tour. Hewlett-Packard for the initial building of the tour, because it was a two-part tour, and Target stores, they stayed with the show for the next 7 years. Put millions of dollars into this tour, and that's what it takes. And every time we open up in a new city, they'd fly Los Lobos in, and we'd have a big party, and then free food and drinks. So Chicanos are going to come to that, And then we would have 10,000 people at an art opening. It was unheard of. And so we started this whole kind of change, and now it wasn't a question of, do you belong in the list of art visionaries, but where do we belong in this category right now. And I've been toying with this. I haven't even talked to you about this, but I've been toying with this idea that as I wandered around and saw all these schools or all these groups of artists that are recognized by the establishment, and when I started, well, we have this school of Chicano art. Well, we don't do schools anymore. It's that's too old school, you know. We just have different groups. I said, well, if you define school as a place where you go to learn and come and argue about things and agree or disagree or find out some new way to look at things, well, then this is a university. It's not just a school because they're coming from everywhere, you know, and it's across a wide section of the country. And I looked at American schools, recognized American schools of art, Hudson River Valley School, Ashcan, pop art, op art, abstract expressionism, and they always generally occurred in one specific small place of the country. If they're going to be categorized as American art, one Hudson River Valley or inner city New York or something. But Chicano art is spread over many states, over a long period of time. We're now into the 40th year, at least, maybe close to 50 years of having Chicano art, and it keeps getting renewed with every generation. Every generation that comes into this field reports from the front. You get news from the front. What are the conditions in your neighborhood right now? What does it look like where you live, where your cousins live, where your grandmother lives? You know, what does that look like? And then they go on to concerns of, you know, artistic concerns. They like to draw flowers, cool. Whatever they like to do, but they always give news from the front. So it's this continuing update. And it's the only school of art that I know that has that. And I'm trying to put together this argument, a coherent academic argument, that this is probably the most influential and substantial school of art America's ever produced. And we're still going. So the change keeps coming, you know. And I says, this is a big change that's happening all over the country, and it's like a lava flow. You know, you can stand in front of it. I wouldn't, you know, because you're gonna get just run over because it's a big influential thing. We're now in a period of time in our country where it's very divisive, and people are on one side or another, and they hate you and they love you, and all those things. But this change is constantly occurring, and it will constantly occur. And what we have to do is learn how to accommodate and appreciate and welcome and embrace all the changes that are happening in the country, because now Chicano has reverted back to its original meaning, which is other. Which is other. Because Chicanos were a minority of being Mexican, you know. People always, well, what is this Chicano? Why can't you just be Mexicans or Mexican Americans, you know? Because I don't want to. I always hated this term Mexican American, you know. Like when I wasn't Mexican, I wasn't born in Mexico. I had never, up to that point, never been to Mexico. I didn't speak Spanish, but I was this semi-thing, you know, because Chicano came from a derogatory term by Mexicans to other Mexicans living in the country. This country, the concept being that the people that moved from Mexico and were living in tin shacks along the border or were working in the fields were no longer truly Mexicanos anymore because they had left their country. They were something smaller. They were something less. They were chicos. They were Chicanos. Little satellite Mexicans living in the thing. But what it really meant to do was to pigeonhole you. You know, you were this other. You were other. Even in the Mexican society, you were other. And so as time went by, there was a great pride that got engendered out of being the other. My father, who died when he was 93 years old, always called himself a Chicano. And from that point on, when I found out what it was, that's what I am. That identifies me. I am a Chicano. And so we started building a reference to this term wherever we went. You know, some people. Now I heard this term the other day that because we've been doing this for so long. Oh, you're a Chicanosaurus. Yeah, well, they build museums around Chicanosaurus, Brontosaurus, Stegosaurus, we're in the saurus category. So this is now we are involved in the very first ever Chicano museum in this whole country. And it is, thank you, thanks to the people of Riverside, because it is art. I mean, the museums is the final imprimatur of cultural acceptance. When you have your own museum that identifies an aesthetic in your country, that is and those wheels grind exceedingly slow, because this is going in the permanent record of the country. You're going to actually be recognized and admired and studied throughout the years, and so they really take their time in letting the officialdom give you the stamp of approval, and it takes a lot. And there's a lot of pushback, especially when it's an ethnic-centric kind of museum. But we're on their way, and this museum will if we get a lot of support from the community and from everybody else, this museum is going to last a long time. It's in a beautiful building in Riverside, California. A beautiful mid-century building, 66,420 square feet. The operative number being 420. It's meant to be. Thank you, Lord. And I've always thought that if you're doing the right thing, good things will happen to you. And that's what happened. After doing 50 museums, which is unheard of with a private collection, because museums don't like to do private collections, and I understand why. They think you're gonna guy is gonna put together a big collection and then put it in a museum and get it all and then sell it and you make a lot of money. That was never my intention. It has never been my intention. I've never sold a painting, and they're all going to this museum. What is important is that what we are involved in, our history and our aesthetic and our savoir, is what's most important for this community and for the rest of the country to know, because this is a giant plus for this country, and it always has been. We're making up for lost time, which is okay. I get it, but I'm still. This is still art made by Americans in America about America. So there we are.
So you've answered my first 23 questions.
Good, cool. Because I'm hungry. I don't know about you guys.
This is the easiest gig I have ever had. So you've talked about Chicano art being shut out of the major institutions, but what's interesting to me is that you were named one of the top 200 collectors worldwide by ArtNet magazine, both in 2017 and recently for 2018, which is an impressive accomplishment. So what do you think that says now about your collection, and does it provide additional validation for the artists that are represented in your collection?
Oh, it absolutely does. Every artist I've ever known always I want to be in a museum. Of course you want to be in a museum. All artists want to be in a museum to have their work recognized. It takes a lot of time to get there. The fact of having toured the country with a major corporate sponsored a tour for 7 years speaks greatly for the power and the recognition of that power of the artistry that has been created here, and it'll just keep going. The thing is, it's a weird category being Chicano. It doesn't appear on the census. There's no box that says Chicano. You can't click that, but you can get a PhD in Chicano studies from Harvard University. So what's the message? We're here, we're not here. We're recognized, we exist, we don't exist. Well, it is up to us to define that and to say it. And so now we have a focal point from where all those conversations can flow through. But, water? Oh, there it is. Ha-ha, look down and it is a quest for authenticity. And I know every Chicano in the crowd today has felt that. Where do I fit in this? Where I kind of should fit in, and I kind of should be recognized, but why do I get the feeling that I'm not? So you have to work through that and you keep going, but it is the largest growing segment of the country, coast to coast. There's more Mexicans now in New York City than any other Latino group combined. More than Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Cubans, uh, all those. More Mexican from Mexico. And I was living in New York. I was doing a movie in New York when that was happening. And I was living down in Trebek, and I go down to get my coffee in the morning, and I hear all this music, and I call my friend in LA. I says, "Hey man, there's a lot of Mexicans down here." He says, "No, they're Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. They've been there forever." No, 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 man. These guys are playing banda music, man. these ain't Puerto Ricans. And I saw it happening, and then all of a sudden now in New York, I thought they would never get over the cold. They couldn't come here. It's too damn cold, and so, but it is proven everywhere you go. Everywhere you go. Chicago was the second biggest collection of Mexicans in the United States. Chicago, like. How did that happen? What do you go eat there? Beaner Schnitzel or what? I didn't get it, but you see it spreading out throughout the country. And so it's almost like the elephant in the room. That Chicano presence in this country is the elephant in the room, but it influences everything we have to do in the country. I mean, the most American thing you can do is enjoy a big bowl of guacamole and Dorito chips and eat drink what's that kind of beer? Yeah, there we go. and watch the Super Bowl. On your giant screen TV. That says America, man. So it's a recognition. What it is a recognition of that, and that's what we're all looking for: is a recognition and an opportunity. And so we're on their way, and the art is the only thing you leave behind as a culture. It's the only thing. It says who we were, what we believed in, what we held dear, and what we the sabor of the country, the flavor of it is not like a precise. Okay, first they wake up and then they, but no, it's you get that feeling because there's many different styles in Chicano art, many different ways to express it, and when you put all those pieces together, you get the whole 360 of the Chicano experience. And it's very different in every aspect, but it's the same in every aspect. Just like we have very many cousins that are different from other cousins and aunts and uncles, and through intermarriage we have a lot of different strains, but we are other, and there is a great deal of pride and integrity from being other, and take pride in it.
So we're now seeing the fifth generation of Chicano artists coming through and really exciting work being created by young artists. Are you seeing any differences in the work being created today than some of the works that were created early on in the movement? And then are there some emerging artists that you're noticing that are exciting you and that you're paying attention to these days?
Yeah, I mean, Chicano art is very evolutionary. I mean, it keeps evolving and defining itself and redefining itself forever, because it started out as the visual face of the political movement, the Chicano civil rights movement. And so the paintings and all the art reflected resistance, reflected a desire to be included and to fight against that. And so it was very political at first. And then when all these artists had expressed their political points of view, and then they started, focusing on their own individual artistic concerns and doing that. But this thing kept getting repeated. And there is no really school of other school of American art that has survived being a political force, and they just have a political force for a little while, and then goodbye, you never hear from them again. We're in our fifth generation. This is a continuing conversation that you can tune into, you could ignore at your peril, but you can use it to enrich your experience, and that's what multiculturalism gets thrown around a lot, but there's a lot of value in extracting from a lot of different cultures what is best about them. and how they can contribute it to our life here in the United States. So and so there's a lot of artists that are they're going on all the time. They're emerging all the time because of all the. I think there was, I don't know, 87 artists in the first show, something like that. 87 artists in the first show, and oh, excuse me, look at look at this person, and they were all either university and or art school trained. This is not naive artists practicing in their backyard or where hobbyist artists. These are serious artists that go to school directly for this, and so and it's continued. Our art schools churn out a lot of Chicano artists, and the Chicano, even the definition of Chicano changes over the years, and it's in the middle of changing right now, but it more goes to inclusion. But there is a lot of Chicano artists out there, and we are kind of defining how an art movement can evolve, because we don't have a lot of them. There's resistance to them. I guess it's because of the commercial aspects of the art world. They like to manipulate them in order for higher prices. But I'm more interested in the cultural resonance of Chicano art. Not only that they're the great artists, every single one of them is like, wow, these people can really put it on canvas, when you recognize that right away, after you put in a lot of. So there's a lot of emerging artists. I just bought a piece the other day. I just bought a house. My wife and I bought a house in Joshua Tree, and we stay there a lot, And so in our house in Los Angeles is full of Chicano art. She goes, ya basta con este. And she's Russian. And she speaks Spanish. And she says, can we do something? Let's do something with the desert. They were like, okay, so it has to be from the desert. So I found these guys in Texas that do Chicano art from the desert. So I snuck one in. But they're, what is it, Richard Amendares from San Antonio. But there's a lot of them. And they keep coming, in different parts. But what we want to do is have this center where all ideas flow through. And this center is not just for paintings. It is arts, culture, and industry. And so it includes all the arts, whether it's painting or photography or motion pictures. I'm very lucky in that Todd was saying earlier that I had made 8 pictures with Robert Rodriguez, and I have, and he is going to join us in this process by teaching a course on how to make a film for $7,000. Because that's what he made his first film for, $7,000. And in this course, you will learn how to do everything. You learn how to be the writer, the director, the actor, the cameraman, the gaffer, the guy that does the catering, the truck driver. And so when it comes time for you to make a movie, you will know how to do it. And this is kind of Chicano bootstraps up from the ground. And that will be a course that will be taught at the Cheech. And the first one will be delivered by Robert Rodriguez, and we'll have a big contest to find out who those contestants are, and there will be a lot of categories. But we are kind of culturally moving this stone forward. It's like marijuana. Well, it's not like marijuana. It's inseparable from marijuana. 39 states have had some form of legalized marijuana, whether it's medicinal or whatever. 39 states. That boulder's rolling downhill right now. So you can try to stop it. I don't know. It's not going to happen, but that's the forward motion of this.
So you talked a lot about different sort of genres inside the School of Chicano Art. And you and I share a love of Rasquachismo. So can you talk a little bit about that and how it plays so deeply in the Chicano art movement?
Rasquachismo is a hard to define thing, but basically it means found art, that you incorporate somehow using elements that you can afford or that are around you, and incorporate it into an art project or an art something identity, and it's usually very low class paper, tires. Fenders, whatever, the great Chicano Rascuachismo painting is a wonderful painting of the Virgin with a 3-bedroom house attached to it, and that's what Rascuachismo use a lot of different elements to make a coherent artistic statement, because that is what you can afford. For painting is for broke painters, and they're all broke. Is buying a canvas is a major investment. They're expensive. Buying paints, if you're struggling for bread, man, it's just and so that's why the Chicanos are great artists on paper, because it's the first thing that they learn how to make that art on, because it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and they can pick up a pencil or pick up a pastel crayon and write on paper or make art on paper. So we have a very long and rich history in that area. But keep going, and so we have some of the most adventurous, progressive artists in this movement. There's these two brothers that will open the Cheech in 2021. We expect you all to be there. The De La Torre brothers. And they make, they're glass blowers essentially, but they are starting to make lenticular art, which is 3-dimensional kind of light reflective art. They will make some really wonderful things but they're the leaders in that category. And we'll have a lot of leaders in a lot of different categories, while at the same time recognizing our long cultural history for things that are unique that we have invented, basically. Because at the end of this journey, I really want to start a lowrider museum in Riverside, I mean, it's like, that is a Chicano invention. And it is everywhere in the world. There's lowriders in Japan and Norway and quién sabe qué, but they're everywhere, and it's an American art form that every culture kind of picks up, but it is a Chicano invention, and we should be recognized for that and celebrated and make it bigger. So we're gonna have to hit Mazda, Chevy, Toyota, whoever, to sponsor it. Next. Ooh. Maybe even Lamborghini.
So this month we're celebrating ways the visual arts can unite people across different cultures and communities. Can you talk a little bit about how you feel art, specifically Chicano art, can accomplish this?
It's like eating Mexican food, you may not, if you never ate Mexican food before, you're like, ooh, it's hot and spicy and like it. But all of a sudden you start to get to like it, and then all of a sudden you can't do without it, And so it's that process of trying something. I'll tell you the ultimate test. I only know of one person that could eat menudo for the first time as an adult, and that was Tommy Chong. But he was Chinese, so I understood, But it's like, but if you grew up with menudo, there's nothing else like it, and you got to have it on Sunday morning, But that's the process of a little bit of integration every single time. And my wife was asking, she's from Russia, born and raised in Russia, in St. Petersburg. There was no political system to really be a part of there. This is your political system. Do this, okay? or the Gestapo. No, they didn't have Gestapo. They had what do they have? The KGB will come and get you. Okay, so she gets here and she starts seeing this political system, and so she was watching the Democratic candidates debate the other night, and the first debate, and at some part, Beto, what's his name? Oh, Beto O'Rourke. I love that for the Mexican. Beto O'Rourke, traditional Mexican name. They start speaking Spanish and delivering their message in Spanish. And she goes, well, why are they doing that? This is America. They speak English. No, but a large section of this country speaks Spanish. And you want to communicate with them. You want to communicate most effectively with them. And so if you speak this language that they don't understand, you're not communicating as effectively as you could. Not that there's anything you have to do this or you have to do that, but hey, you want to communicate. We want the country to come together. We want them to be more educated. You want this country to be more inclusive. And that means including everything, So, try these Doritos. They're Mexican. And they're the elephant in the room. You don't realize. Fritos. Fritos. So, there we go.
So there are over 700 pieces in the collection, and we've been scrolling through
Oh, really?
a handful of those.
Ooh.
And I thought maybe we talk about a couple of those.
Sure.
So here is Carlos Alvarez,
Yeah.
one of your all-time favorite
All-time
artists.
favorites. That one's called Sunset Crash. This is the one I just bought. It's up and it's a print, two pieces. But Carlos Almaraz, who was actually the founder of Chicano art, came out of Los Angeles, born in Mexico, at a very early age, 2 or 3, lived in Chicago and with his family, and then they moved to L.A. And he started recognizing, a very smart guy, very educated and very well traveled, and he started recognizing that these Chicano painters were saying something unique. Not only they were really good painters, they could play, painters have this term like, boy, he could really put it on. They could put that paint on canvas, and so these painters could really put it on, and he started recognizing how, and they were talking about something. That's the great thing about Chicano art, the school, it's about something. It's not just designs or geometrics or color experiments. They have all that, but it is about something. It's about a group of people who are integral to the advancement of this country and who have been integral to the history of this country forever. So he started organizing this little group, Los Four. It was the first group, Chicano collective they had. Carlos Almaraz, Frank Romero, Magoo, and Beto de la Rocha. Are we getting the hook here? Okay. But he started organizing and started proselytizing for this aesthetic. Look at it this way. This is how we relate to America, and this is how America relates to you. And this is an evolving situation. And he kept insisting that they were great artists, and they were talking about something great. And eventually, it caught traction. And then it recedes. And then you make it get traction again. And then it recedes a little far. But every time the tide comes in, it leaves something on the beach when it goes out. And if it comes in higher, it leaves more things higher on the beach. And it's a constant a process of that, of coming in and influencing the culture no matter where you go, So we're in that process right now. What we need is to continue the clarity of that process through this museum, where we can come in and have all kinds of avenues for discussion and all kinds of avenues for creativity and for communicating our message, and it's a wonderful message, to the rest of the country, so that maybe you'll try that spicy food next, and maybe even someday menudo, you never know.
So unfortunately, we are out of time. If you're interested in the Cheech and would like to get a little more information, we have some folks here: Drew Oberjurgi, Ophelia Valdez, Jr.,
This is the
Valerie
director of the museum.
Fine. Feel free to stop them and ask them questions. Cheech is going to take a break and then come back out and
Do the second set.
do the second set, the meet and greet.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Support your local Chicano artist. It's tax deductible. Thank you.